The smell of dust, old paper, and burnt coffee hung in the air. Somewhere in Australia, millions of people were waking before sunrise, pulling on uniforms, checking bank balances on glowing phone screens, telling themselves the same thing they'd been telling themselves for years: just work harder, earn more, push through. One day, freedom will come. But what if that promise was a lie? And what if one Australian financial voice built his entire reputation exposing the uncomfortable truth hiding behind salaries, mortgages, dividend statements, and the illusion of success, while ordinary Australians were too exhausted to notice? Because Scott Pape discovered something that sounded almost dangerous. Something simple enough to be ignored. Something that could quietly separate people who spend their lives chasing money from people who eventually make money work for them. Before we go deeper, tell me something. What city are you watching from? Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, Perth, somewhere regional? And answer honestly, do you think hard work alone creates financial freedom? Subscribe, leave a quick like, because what you're about to hear might change the way you think about money forever. Scott Pape's story doesn't begin with luxury. It doesn't begin with billionaire yachts, private jets, or champagne investment parties overlooking Sydney Harbour. It begins somewhere far more Australian. Practical, dusty, grounded. The kind of environment where people understand effort because life leaves little room for fantasy. Long before millions recognized the barefoot investor, before television appearances, before becoming one of Australia's most influential money educators, Scott Pape noticed something deeply unsettling about modern financial life. People could be intelligent, hardworking, responsible, even successful by conventional standards, and still feel trapped. That observation seems obvious now, but really think about it. How many Australians wake before dawn, battle traffic, work long hours, chase promotions, upgrade lifestyles, and quietly carry anxiety like a second job? How many people earn more than they ever imagined, yet somehow feel less secure? More salary, more repayments, more subscriptions, more financial pressure, different numbers, same knot in the stomach. Scott Pape saw the pattern. And once you see it, you start seeing it everywhere. The young professional in Melbourne celebrating a promotion over overpriced drinks, convinced life is finally improving. Weeks later, higher rent, new car payments, lifestyle upgrades arriving silently. Same anxiety, different packaging. The tradie earning strong money while secretly carrying debt pressure heavy enough to disturb sleep. The family presenting happiness online while arguing quietly about bills after midnight in kitchens lit by cold refrigerator light. Australia can look financially successful from the outside. Inside households, very different story. Mortgage stress, comparison, lifestyle inflation, fear of falling behind, and fear changes behavior. That matters because money isn't just maths. Scott Pape understood that earlier than many people realize. Money is emotional, deeply emotional. Fear, identity, status, hope, control, or the terrifying feeling of losing control. That emotional layer explains why financial decisions often ignore logic. Because humans don't behave like spreadsheets. We behave like humans. We overspend when stressed. We avoid numbers when overwhelmed. We chase certainty during fear. We confuse appearing successful with actually becoming secure. And modern culture quietly rewards that confusion. Look around. Bigger homes. Bigger lifestyles. Bigger expectations. Australians are constantly sold a financial story so familiar most people never challenge it. Study hard. Get the job. Buy the property. Upgrade life. Stay busy. Retire eventually. Safe. Normal. Respectable. But Scott Pape kept asking a more uncomfortable question. What if you're following a script designed to keep you running, not necessarily free? That question hits differently once bills arrive. Once markets wobble. Once interest rates shift. Once uncertainty stops being theoretical. Because uncertainty always comes. The ASX rises. The ASX falls. Property booms. Property slows. Economic optimism becomes economic anxiety faster than most people expect. And during those moments, people discover what their financial foundations are actually built on. That's where Scott Pape's philosophy begins separating itself from flashy financial culture. Not with hype. Not with promises of overnight millions. with something much less glamorous: protection, systems, behavior, long-term thinking. At first glance, almost boring. But boring has a hidden advantage. Boring survives. Think about investing. Real investing. Not social media adrenaline. Not hot tip gambling dressed up as strategy. Long-term ownership. Consistent behavior. Patience. Dividend thinking. The quiet power of allowing time to do work most people emotionally interrupt. That sounds simple. Simple is deceptive. Because simple doesn't mean easy. Humans crave excitement. Fast wins. Immediate proof. The financial industry understands this perfectly. Headlines scream urgency. Influencers promise shortcuts. Markets become entertainment. Fear becomes content. Greed becomes branding. Noise becomes constant. And somewhere inside that chaos, ordinary Australians are trying to make decisions about their future. Buy. Sell. Wait. Panic. Hope. Scott Pape kept returning to an almost frustratingly simple principle. Build systems stronger than your emotions. Because the greatest battle in wealth creation isn't always against markets. Often, it's against yourself. Against impatience. Against lifestyle pressure. Against comparison. Against the seductive urge to look wealthy instead of becoming financially resilient. And resilience matters more than people think. Imagine two Australians. One looks successful. Luxury car. Designer lifestyle. Heavy repayments. Constant pressure hidden beneath polished appearances. The other looks ordinary. Intentional spending. Emergency buffer. Consistent investing. Dividend income slowly growing in the background. Which one feels richer? Not online. At 2 a.m. Alone. When uncertainty arrives. That question changes everything. Because Scott Pape wasn't merely talking about money. He was talking about freedom. Real freedom. The kind that doesn't arrive through one dramatic breakthrough. The kind built through repetitive decisions nobody applauds. A budget followed quietly. An impulse purchase resisted. An investment contribution made during uncertainty. A long-term plan maintained while headlines scream panic. Small decisions. Repeated relentlessly. That's less exciting than financial fantasy. It's also how many people slowly change their lives. And maybe that's the forbidden rule hidden underneath modern Australian finance. Freedom doesn't automatically appear when income rises. Sometimes higher income simply funds more expensive stress. That truth is uncomfortable. Because it forces a brutal question. Are you building wealth? Or building a more expensive version of survival? Scott Pape's message resonated across Australia because millions recognized themselves inside that tension. The pressure, the confusion, the exhaustion of feeling financially busy without feeling financially free. And beneath all of it, a quieter fear. What if I do everything right and still never get ahead? That fear has weight. You can feel it in conversations avoided between partners, in unopened banking apps, in late-night scrolling through property prices, in the silent comparison triggered by someone else's apparent success. Scott Pape challenged that emotional landscape with a message many people underestimated because it sounded too simple. Simplify. Protect downside risk. Invest patiently. Ignore noise. Think long-term. Not glamorous. Not viral. Powerful. Because time behaves differently for disciplined people. Compounding doesn't usually arrive with fireworks. It arrives quietly. Almost invisibly. Months pass. Years pass. Progress feels slow. Modern culture hates slow. Which is exactly why patience becomes such a rare financial advantage. Most people quit before compounding becomes emotionally rewarding. Most people abandon systems during boredom. Most people underestimate the cost of emotional decision-making. Scott Pape understood something deeply human. People don't just need financial knowledge. They need behavioral structures capable of surviving real life. Real life is messy. Unexpected expenses. Market volatility. Job uncertainty. Family pressure. Fatigue. Fear. During those moments, complicated financial theories often collapse. Simple systems endure. That's why simplicity can be surprisingly powerful. Not because it's intellectually impressive, because it's repeatable. And repeatability quietly builds momentum. Momentum becomes confidence. Confidence becomes stability. Stability creates options. Options begin looking a lot like freedom. Maybe not glamorous freedom. Not sports car freedom. Something deeper. The ability to breathe during uncertainty. The ability to make decisions without panic steering every move. The ability to see market volatility without emotionally detonating your future plans. That kind of freedom doesn't photograph well, but it changes lives. And perhaps that's what makes Scott Pape's philosophy resonate so strongly with ordinary Australians. It speaks to people who are tired of feeling trapped between aspiration and anxiety, tired of confusing movement with progress, tired of chasing financial success that never emotionally feels like success. Because maybe the forbidden financial freedom rule isn't hidden inside a secret ASX formula. Maybe it's hidden inside a much harder realization. That wealth is often quieter than people expect. Less performance, more discipline, less appearance, more control, less urgency, more patience. And in a culture addicted to speed, patience can feel almost rebellious. Maybe that's why so many people overlook it. Or maybe, deep down, they're afraid the simple answer might actually be true.